content.
And Congressman, President Trump just a short time ago said that they plan for this operation to last up to 4 weeks. If that's the case, do you think that he then really needs to come to Congress for approval for an operation of that length?
It's not the president's decision for how long this lasts or even to start it in the first place. This is a war of choice without congressional authorization, and he needs to come to Congress immediately to seek an authorization for the use of military force. Otherwise, these hostilities need to cease immediately. And the number one question that Congress needs to press upon in these debates is, what's the strategic endgame? Because the Ayatollah is dead. Well, the Ayatollah was 86 years old with a cancer diagnosis. So these bombs did what biology was going to do anyways. The actual question is, are we just having a regime succession where there's going to be a continued pattern of hardliners who are going to try to promote their ballistic and nuclear programs and continue to try to attack Israel and Americans? Or are we going to actually have a regime change where Iran is willing to rejoin the community of nations, accept that they're not going to have air supremacy in the region, accept that there has to be a policy of mutual non-interference where they cannot foment terrorism in Syria and Lebanon and beyond? Because if we don't have clarity about that strategic endgame, then the American public don't understand why their service members are being put in harm's way.
Democrats right now, I understand they're planning to meet this afternoon, but your party seems to be somewhat divided. One of your colleagues on the Senate side, John Fetterman, has said publicly that he supports this operation. He also says he does not believe that it violates the War Powers Act. What's your response to him?
I think the senator is on an island within the party about this not violating the War Powers Act. The vast majority of Democrats in Congress, in both chambers, are going to vote for this War Powers resolution that makes clear the president violated the law by not seeking an authorization for the use of military force. I do think that many Democrats understand, and I count myself among them, that Iran cannot be allowed to promote a nuclear or ballistic missile program. Iran cannot be funding proxy terror forces throughout the region. Iran cannot seek Israel's annihilation or continue to kill American troops. And America does need to ensure that whoever is leading Iran understands that if they're going to continue to try to kill Americans, Israelis, Saudis, then they're going to continue to be at risk themselves. I just messaged a good friend of mine, an Israeli, who is about my age. He's got a young family, and they're huddled in a bomb shelter right now with a newborn child, with several young daughters. And I asked him, what should the world know about how you're feeling? And he said two things. First, morale is high. They're exhausted and worse, but they know they're in it to win it. And number two, that they feel a sense of solidarity, not just with Americans who are supporting them, but also with Saudis and Emiratis who are going through the same thing. And I think the Iranian regime needs to understand that sense of we're in it to win it, and there's solidarity. The world is not going to accept this terror regime continuing to operate.
So with that in mind, the president has said that the Iranian people should rise up. But what do you realistically see as the future of Iranian leadership after this military phase of the campaign is over?
Abby, I can tell you with high degree of confidence that there is nobody in the United States government, not the intelligence services, not the Department of War, not in Congress, who has any degree of certainty about who is going to succeed the Ayatollah in the medium term. And that's an issue, because the greatest leverage that the United States has is not in killing the Ayatollah. As I said, the guy was 86. The greatest leverage is in empowering the Iranian people to self-determine and in placing a moderate who actually seeks what's best for the Iranian people, not the annihilation of other nations. And those are all open questions. And that's precisely why the president needs to come to Congress and allow the people's representatives to have a debate about the strategy behind our approach to Iran.
Congressman Jake Auchincloss, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Good evening.
We've got a lot more of our breaking news coverage of the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran ahead, including